Hi everyone, this is Ruchika Arora from Paper Love. Hope you guys are doing great. I'm finally here with my first tutorial, yay! And it's none other than the most requested one, my purse album. Although this album was a little tricky to do for the first tutorial, but I've tried my best to simplify the whole process and I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's just go through it quickly. I'll put the whole video link in the description box below. So here we have a magnet closure on the front, and on the front inside cover we have a waterfall. We have 4 different pages with all different layouts on each side, and there's a stacked pocket on the back inside cover. Now I've used the Fashionista paper collection from Echo Park for this album, and unfortunately I had only one paper bag, so for the tutorial I've used these papers from Photoplay. They are by Julie Nutting, called Paper Dolls, and I've made exactly the same album. You can basically use any nice cute girly floral papers for this purse album. So let's get started. So this is a list of all the tools and materials that you'll need to make this purse album, and here's the cutting guide. You can just pause the video here or take a screenshot and go ahead and cut your chipboard and cardstock. So let's start with the hinge first, which is this 8 inches by 12 inches piece of cardstock. Place the long side, that is the 12-inch side, on the top of your scoreboard and start scoring at 3 inches, and then 3 5/8, 4 1/4, 4 1/2, 5 1/8, 5 3/4, 6 inches, 6 5/8, 7 1/4, 7 1/2, 8 1/8, and 8 3/4. So basically we have 4 5/8 inch pages with a gusset of 1/4 inch. Now let's flip your paper to the back side where you can feel the score lines are embossed. Now as you can see, we have 2 thick lines and a slim one, and again 2 thick lines and a slim one, so on and so forth. So we're going to start by marking the first thick line and then leave a thick and a thin one, then mark again, and then again leave 2, and then mark again leave 2, mark again, and then you're going to have the last one left. So these are the places we're going to put our tapes. Now we're going to put 1/2 inch double-sided tapes on where we've marked, and make sure you put the tapes in between the score lines and not on them. Now leaving your first score line, you're going to fold on the second one, that's the one after your first tape, and remove your tape backing and stick it down. Burnish it well with your bone folder, and now fold onto the first score line that we had left, and you have your first inch ready. And repeat the process for the other 3 tapes as well. Now we'll just go through all the pages with our bone folder to make sure that they fold properly on both the sides. Turn it on the back side and fill the whole area with tapes. Now I've got this 1 inch tape customized so that I don't have to put too many 1/2 inch tapes where I have to cover the whole area like this one. But if you don't have 1 inch tapes, you can go ahead with 1/2 inch or 3/8 inch, whatever you have. Just make sure you cover the whole area with tapes because the hinge really needs to be secure on the album. So this will make sure that the hinge doesn't come off at all. Now we're going to put 3/8 inch tapes on our hinges on the front, and you're going to put the tape on the edge of the hinge so that you leave around 3/16 of an inch gap between your base and your tape, like that. Go ahead and do that on both the sides of all your hinges. Now let's move on to the cover. You'll need 2 pieces of 10.5 by 12 inches of cardstock and all of your chipboard pieces, that is 1.5 by 8.5 inches and 1 5/8 by 8.5 inches, 3 1/4 by 8.5 inches, and 2 pieces of 7 inches by 8.5 inches. Now just go ahead and cover the back side of your chipboard with your double-sided tapes. Again, I've used the 1-inch tapes. You can use whatever size you're comfortable with. Just make sure you cover the whole area. And after you're done with that, take one of your cardstock pieces, and on the back side, you're going to put a 3/8 inch tape on the short end of your page. Now we're going to stick the second piece to the first one, and just flip it to the back side as well, and make sure you have your short edge aligned with the short edge. Now start from the corner and press it down, and then follow the edge of the tape. Once you're sure, just stick it down and burnish it with your bone folder. Now take your 3 1/4 by 8.5 inch chipboard piece. This is going to come in the front of your album, and we're just going to trim it down like that at an angle to make it look like a purse. Now take a ruler and a pencil, and on one of the short edges you're going to mark at 2 inches from the top. Do the same thing on the other side. Make sure you mark at the absolute edge of the chipboard. Now we're going to mark at the center of our bottom edge, that is 4 1/4 inches. Now join this center point with the markings that we've done on the sides. Now carefully just cut on the lines that you've just drawn. And you're done. So now let's move on to putting our chipboard on the cardstock. Now make sure this is the back side of your cardstock, and you're going to start with the 7 inches by 8.5 inch piece. We're going to leave a 1 inch border on the 3 sides, and you can either eyeball it or measure it with your scale. Next comes the 1.5 inch piece, and we're going to leave a 3/16 of an inch gap between the two pieces. So right now we're just laying out all the chipboard pieces on the cardstock. Once we're sure about the placement, then we'll start sticking it down. So the next piece is the second 7 inch piece, followed by the 1 3/8 inch piece, and the last one is the 3 1/4 inch piece that we just cut. We're going to leave a 3/16 of an inch gap between all of the chipboard pieces. And once you're sure about the placement, you start sticking it down. If you want, you can mark on the cardstock where you had kept your chipboard if you're not sure. I have been doing this for a long time to just be able to eyeball it. Once you're done sticking everything down, just flip it over and go over the chipboard pieces with your bone folder. Now we're just going to go over all the edges of the chipboard with a scoring or an embossing tool. We're just going to go over all the outside edges and not the area between the chipboard pieces. Now just gently start folding your paper over the score lines that we just made. Now we're just going to cut off the corners of our cardstock. So just turn towards the 7-inch chipboard piece and draw a diagonal line leaving 1/8 inch from the chipboard corner. Do that on both the sides, just like that, and just cut it off. And turn towards the other side. Now this side is slightly different, so we're going to start by drawing a parallel line to one of the triangular edges that we have and leave around 1 inch between the chipboard and your line. And just do the same thing for the other diagonal edge that we have. Now you see the pointed corner that's sticking out. We're just going to join that to the lines that we've just made to make a small triangle like structure over there. Not structure, shape, sorry. Just like that. Now just draw a straight line at the corner, leaving like a 1/16 of an inch from that corner. That line is just for guidance, so we're not going to cut through it. Now we're just going to repeat what we did on the first side, that is just draw a diagonal line at the corners, leaving 1/8 inch from the chipboard piece. I'm sorry the bottom corner went a little outside the frame and I didn't realize it at the time, but you can see what I'm doing at the top corner. I've done the exact same thing at the bottom. So now we're just going to cut through all these lines that we just drawn. I'm just shading the area with my pencil that we need to cut off. It's basically all the triangles that we see on the corners and one in the center. Now let's just cut these one by one. So here don't completely cut inside, but just to that guideline that we had drawn, leaving 1/16 of an inch from that corner. So in the end, this is the shape that you're going to be left with. As you can see, the cardstock will now perfectly wrap around your chipboard like this. Now we're just going to put tape on all the corners of our chipboard, but I'm using 1 inch, but if again you're using 1/2 inch, then you can put one strip on the edge of the chipboard and one strip on the edge of the cardstock. Now just take your bone folder and push the tape inside the gap between two chipboard pieces, just like that. I'm just speeding it up a little. I'm just covering all the corners of the chipboard. Now let's start sticking the cardstock down on the chipboard. Start by removing the tape backing of one of the long corners and slowly just push the cardstock from the center on the chipboard, and you can use your bone folder to help you do that. Now on the corners, just push that little bit excess that's left on the corner of your chipboard piece, just like that. Again, repeat the same thing on the other long side. Now move over to the shorter ends and repeat the same thing. Now once you're done wrapping your chipboard, we're just gonna take a bone folder and go between the chipboard pieces, just like that, to slowly fold our cardstock. Don't completely fold it at this point, just slightly. Now we're going to attach our hinge to the cover, but before that we're just going to split the second hinge from the left. So just mark the center, that is 4 inches, and we're just going to cut a straight line right till the base. Now once we've divided our hinge into 2, we're just going to wedge all the corners, just like that. Now let's attach our hinges to the base. So we're going to put this on the 1.5 inch piece of the chipboard. Now you can mark the center with the pencil or just eyeball it. I use my mat to eyeball the center, and once I'm sure, I'll just stick it down. Now take your bone folder and burnish everything down, including the space between the hinges. Now just go through the space between the 2 chipboard pieces and simultaneously start bending your cover just like that. Make sure to also smoothen out the outer part of the cover as well. Now we're going to cover the other spine that we have on the right as well with a cardstock measuring 7 3/4 by 8 3/8 of an inch. And I just wanted to use my scraps, so I've used 2 different pieces. Now go ahead and cover the back side of the cardstock with tapes, and we're going to attach this exactly how we attached the first hinge. Align your cardstock with the 2 corners of our base and just stick it down. Now again, just go through the spaces between the chipboard with your bone folder while folding your cover. I'm just gonna burnish the outside edges of the cover as well, and we're done. I hope you've enjoyed so far. If you have any questions, just put it in the comment section below, and let's move on to the pages now. Okay, so let's start scoring and taping the other pieces of our cardstock. We're gonna start with the waterfall pieces, and the first one are these 3 by 4.5 inches of cardstock into 8 pieces. I'm just gonna show you this one piece, and you can repeat the same thing on all 8 pieces. So we're gonna take our scoreboard and put the 4.5 inch side on top and score at 4 inches, just like that. And the same thing on all 8 pieces. Now you can go ahead and score all your pieces, but I'm just gonna show the scoring and taping together because I feel it's easier for me to explain and for you all to understand what is happening with each piece. So we're gonna just fold and burnish the our half-inch score line and put 3/8 inch tape on top and burnish that as well. Do the same thing on all 8 pieces. Now we're not wedging any of the corners over here because these are waterfall pieces. Now we move on to the bigger waterfall, that's 5.5 by 7 inches into 8 pieces. Now one piece you're going to keep aside and do nothing to it. All other 7 pieces you're going to put the 5.5 inch side on top on your scoreboard and score at 5 inches. Again fold, burnish and tape with the 3/8 inch tape. And repeat the same thing on all 7 pieces, and the last 8th one you're going to keep as it is. That's the base of our waterfall. Next is the 4.5 by 6 inches into 10 pieces. We're gonna put the 4.5 inch side on top on the scoreboard and score at 4 inches. Again fold, burnish and put the 3/8 inch tape and do that on all the 10 pieces. Now out of the 10 pieces that we have, 4 are waterfall pieces, so we're not going to wedge the corners, but the other 6 are our flaps, so we're just going to trim off the sides of the half-inch strip that we have, and we're going to do that to all the 6 of them. So all the waterfall pieces are done now. Next is this 3.5 by 6 inches into 2 pieces. We're just going to do the half-inch strip again. So put the 3.5 inch side on top and score at 3 inches. Fold, burnish and tape it with the 3/8 inch tape again. Now we're going to wedge the corners for this as well and repeat the same thing on the second piece. Now next we have the 3 3/4 by 5 3/4 into 2 pieces. Now these two are inlets, so we're not going to do anything to them. Next we have 2 pieces of 3 3/4 by 6 inches. Put the 3 3/4 inch on top on the scoreboard and score at 3 1/4 inches. Again just fold, burnish, tape with the 3/8 inch tape and wedge the corners. And repeat the same thing on the second piece as well. Next up, 3 inches into 8 3/4 into 4 pieces. Now we're gonna put the 8 3/4 inch on top and score at 8 1/4 inches. Do the same thing for all the 4 pieces. Again fold, burnish and tape it with the 3/8 inch tape and wedge the corners. Next we have one piece of 4 inches by 6.5 inches, and we're going to keep the 6.5 inch on top and score at 6 inches. Fold, burnish, tape and wedge the corners. Simple so far, right? I hope so. Now next is the 6 by 8 3/4 inch into 2 pieces. Again a half-inch score line, so we're going to put the 8 3/4 inch on top and score at 8 1/4 inches. Again fold, burnish and tape. I've said that so many times now that I feel like putting it on a t-shirt, Anyway, we're also going to wedge the corners over here and repeat it on the second piece. Next up, 2 pieces of 6 by 6.5 inches. We're gonna put the 6.5 inch on top and score at 6 inches. Guess what's next? Fold, burnish, tape, wedge your corners and repeat on the second piece. I hope I'm not boring you guys with my stupid sense of comedy. Just let me know if I should stop. So the next piece is 2.5 inches by 7 inches. This is our belly band piece. So put the 7 inch on top, and we're going to score at 1/2 inches and 6.5 inches. Fold on both the 1/2 inch strips, burnish, tape, and we're going to wedge the corners on both of them. Next piece is 2 3/4 by 7 inches. This is a side pocket. So we're going to score on the short side at 2 1/4 inches and on the long side at 1/2 inches and 6.5 inches. Now fold and burnish with your bone folder on all 3 sides and put your 3/8 inch tape. Now we're not going to put the tape on that small corner square that we have, because it's going to get cut anywhere. Now these corners we're going to wedge normally like we do, and on the other side we're just going to go diagonally through that intersection of our score lines, just like that on both the sides. So this is how it looks in the end. Now next we're going to move on to our stacked pockets. So we have one piece that's going to be 2 1/4 by 9.5, and the other one is 2 3/4 by 9.5. So we're first going to take the top pocket and take your scoreboard, and this is the 2 1/4 by 9.5 inch piece, and on the long side you're going to score at 1/2 inches and 9 inches. Keep that aside and take the 2 3/4 by 9.5 inch piece, that's our bottom pocket, and then on the short side we're going to score at 2 1/4 inches, and on the long side 1/2 inch and 9 inches. Now we're going to tape and cut this exactly how we did the previous pocket and belly band. So you're going to fold and burnish with your bone fold on all the score lines and put your tape on the 1/2 inch strips. And just wedge all 4 of the corners. And this piece is done. The next one, again you're going to put your tape on the 1/2 inch. Oh, okay, my tape got over. I'm just getting a new roll. So we'll put our tape on our 1/2 inch strips, excluding those tiny squares that we have in the corners. Now we're going to wedge our corners again. This side we're going to do normally like we do, and on the other side we're going to go diagonally through the intersecting point of our 2 score lines, not inside it but through the intersecting point. Now next is 2 pieces of 5 inches by 6 inches. Now this is part of our envelope page. We're just gonna score on the 5 inch side at 1/2 inches and 4.5 inches, and just fold, burnish and tape and wedge your corners, and repeat on the second piece. And that's done. So the next one is 2 pieces of 4 inches by 2 5/8 of an inch, and on the short side we are going to score it at 2 inches and 2 1/8 inch. Now fold and burnish both the score lines, but we're going to put tape only on that 1/2 inch piece, not on the 1/8 inch strip that we have. Now while wedging the corners also, make sure you wedge only on that 1/2 inch strip where we have put our tape, and not on that 1/8 inch strip that we have, because that's our gusset. We're going to do the same thing on the second piece as well. The next one is 2 pieces of 4 and 7/8 by 5 and a quarter inches. This is how we're going to score it. So on your scoreboard, put the 4 and 7/8 of an inch side on top first. We're going to make 2 score lines here, one on 4 and a quarter inches and the second one on 4 and 3/8 of an inch. Now turn to the 5 and a quarter inch side, and here we're going to first make a score line at 1/2 inch, then at 5/8 of an inch, the next one at 4 and 5/8 of an inch, and the last one at 4 and 3/4 of an inch. So this is how it's going to look at the end. Now let's fold and burnish all the score lines that we just made. Now again, we're going to put our tapes only on the 1/2 inch strips that we have, not on our 1/8 inch strips, because that is our gusset. And again, we're not going to put the tape on our tiny little squares that we have in the corners. Now we're going to wedge our corners. So on these sides, we're just going to trim off the 1/2 inch strips, excluding the 1/8 inch. Just like that. Now on these corners, you can see there's one square on the corner and there's one tiny one in the middle. Let me just focus. So right here there's a tiny little square, so we're just gonna cut through it like that. Yeah, so this is how it'll look. And now we're just normally going to wedge how we wedge the other corners. So trim off that 1/2 inch strip, excluding our 1/8 inch strip. So this is how it's going to look in the end. So now when we fold these, it's going to give a perfect corner for our pocket. So let's look at it again on the other side. We have one square on the corner and then a tiny little one right in the center. Let me just shade it with my pencil. So this small square that I'm talking about. So we're just gonna cut that off. Cut this whole thing off. And now we're just gonna wedge those 1/2 inch strips, excluding our 1/8 inch strips. Just like that. So here we have that shape again. Now this piece is done. You're gonna do the exact same thing on the second piece. Now next we have our 2 diagonal pockets. So that is 2 pieces of 3.5 by 3.5 inches. And on both the sides we're just gonna score at 3 inches. Now just fold on your score lines and put the tape on the 1/2 inch strips, excluding that tiny square in the corner. And now we're going to wedge the corners the same way we've done all our pockets. Now place it down like this, where you have your tape on the left and the bottom side, and we're just going to cut the right top corner. So just take your ruler and mark at 2 inches from the top on the right side of your pocket, where we don't have the tape. Now turn it clockwise and you're going to mark at 2 inches again from the bottom this time. Now just join the 2 dots. Now we're just gonna cut on the line that we just drew, and there you have it. And just repeat the same thing on the second pocket as well. Next we have the 3 pieces of 6 inches by 12 inches. Now just take the first one and put the 12-inch side on the scoreboard. We're gonna score here at 4 inches and 8 inches. So this will go on one of the pages. So just fold and burnish on the score lines and keep it aside. Now the other two pieces are slightly different. So on the 12-inch side, we're going to score at 4 inches. And we're going to flip the paper here and score at 8 inches. The same thing on the second piece. On the 12-inch side, we're going to score at 4 inches, flip and score at 8 inches. Now just fold and burnish the score lines with your bone folder. And it's done. So next one is 8 inches by 6 inches into 4 pieces. So the first two we're going to keep aside. They are our page base, so that we're going to use it later. The third one is an inlet that goes on our last page, so keep that aside as well. And the fourth and the last one is our fold out. So here we're going to score at on the long side, that's 8-inch side, at 4 inches. And just fold and burnish on your score line. And we can keep this aside. Now we're almost done, just a few more pieces left. The next one is 2 inches by 5 and 7/8 of an inch, and we have 2 pieces. We don't need to score or tape this, so just keep it aside, we'll use it later. The next piece is 1.5 by 6 inches. This is our waterfall closure. So on the long side, we're just going to score it at 5.5 inches and just fold, burnish, tape and wedge your corners. So we're done with all the scoring and taping. We have one more piece left, which is a handle. It measures 1.25 by 8.5 inches. And there's one more piece which is optional, that's 3.25 by 4.25 inches. So I'm going to use this to mat my 3x4 journaling card. So you can see that towards the end if you need that piece of cardstock or not. So as I said, all the scoring and taping is done. Now we can start constructing our pages. So we're going to start with the 8 by 6 inch pieces that we had kept aside for the base of our pages. So let's start with the first page. So we have a top flap and 2 side flaps. So for the first page, we need the base, that is our 6 by 8 inches, and the top flap is 4 by 6.5 inches, and the 2 side flaps are 3 3/4 by 6 inches into 2 pieces. So let's start with marking the top of our page so that we don't mess up the alignment. And now turn it upside down and stick your top flap right in the center. I'm just using my mat to mark the center. You can use a scale, you can eyeball it, whatever you're comfortable with. And now the 2 side flaps just go on the 2 short sides. Just go over all the folds with your bone folder, and we are done with the first page. Now the second page has a 4 by 6 fold out, a gate fold and 2 diagonal pockets on the gate fold. Flip your page to the back side and make sure you mark the top of the page correctly. I always prefer doing that because otherwise it can get really confusing. Now we have our 2 diagonal pockets that were 3.5 by 3.5 inches, and our side flaps are 2 pieces of 4.5 by 6 inches, the ones where we have wedged our corners. So just turn your page sideways and attach the first side flap to the side of your page. Just burnish it with your bone folder and do the same thing on the other side. So our gate fold is done. Now turn the page again so that the top end is at the top, and now we're gonna attach our diagonal pockets to these side flaps that we just attached. Remove the tape backing and just first align the bottom of the pocket to the bottom of the flap and then the side. Just go over it with your bone folder and do the same thing on the other side. Now the fold out that we had made goes here. Now this is done. We are moving on to making the pocket page that holds this page and this page. For that, we're going to need our 4 pieces of 3 inches by 8 3/4 of an inch. Now place one of them down like this with the 1/2 inch flap on top, and take the second one and attach it to the bottom of the first one. Now we're going to do the same thing with the other 1/2 inch flap. Take the tape backing off and make sure your page is completely flat, and then stick the other side down. Do the same thing with the other 2 pieces. And this is done. So let's move on to the next one. Here we have a split page with 2 envelopes on one side and trifolds on the other side. If you look carefully, the top of our envelope page is the bottom of our trifold page. Remember how I made you guys mark the top of the page on the first and the second one that we did, and that is going to come in handy right now. So these are all the pieces of our cardstock that we're going to need for this page. So let's start with our trifolds. Now one is going to open to the right side and one is going to open to the left side. Just make a mark to identify on which side your trifold opens. Now just write something down or make a marking to identify the alignment of your page. So now I know that this is how it's supposed to attach to my album. Now take one of your trifolds and just flip it around. At this point the alignment does not matter because we're just attaching the base of our envelope. That is a piece of 5 inches by 6 inches that we had scored on 2 sides. Now we're just going to attach it like this. So turn your trifold sideways and remove the tape backing of one of the 1/2 inch strips and just align the edges and stick it down. Now just burnish it with your bone folder and do the same thing for the other 1/2 inch strip. Just make sure your page is completely flat and then stick it down and burnish it with your bone folder. Now turn back towards the trifold and make sure it's straight. So now we're going to flip it upside down like this. So the top of the trifold page is actually the bottom of the envelope page. Now just write something down over here so that you don't get confused with the alignment, and we'll know which side is the top of our page. Now we're going to attach the bottom of our envelope to the base. So remove the tape backing of the bottom 1/2 inch strip and align it with the bottom of our page. Stick it down and burnish it with the bone folder. Now let's do the sides. So remove the tape backing and carefully align. Sorry for my head peeking out. I just had to make sure that the sides are properly aligned. Once you're sure, just stick it down and burnish it with the bone folder. Now just turn it upside down and we're going to attach the top of our envelope over here. So remove the tape backing and just align it with your edge and stick it down. Go over it with your bone folder. You're done. Now let's do the same thing on the other trifold that we have, which opens on the left side. So we're going to attach our envelope base first on the back side of a trifold. Now turn back to your trifold and make sure it's straight and flip it upside down. So the top of your trifold page is the bottom of your envelope page. Now you're going to attach the bottom part of the envelope over here. And now let's attach the top flap. And this one is also done. So let's move on to the next page. We've already done the pocket for this page. Now we are going to do the page itself. So it has a 4x6 trifold and a 4x6 gatefold. So let's start with our base, that is the 8x6 inch piece of cardstock, and our two side flaps, that is 4.5 by 6 inches with the wedged corners, and we're just going to attach them like this on the sides of our page. We're just going to attach it the same way we did it on the second page. So the gatefold is done. Now the trifold, we're going to attach it later when we do the papers. Now just flip the page normally. There's nothing upside down over here, and just mark the top of your page. Now we're going to put a 6 by 6.5 inch flap on the left side of our page. Now on this page we're going to have our waterfall. So remember the 4.5 by 6 inch pieces where we had not wedged the corners. So those 4 pieces are going to come here. So turn your page upside down and start sticking your waterfall pieces one by one. And it's done. So now one piece of 2 by 5 and 7/8 of an inch is going to come here as a pocket, but we're going to stick that later with our papers. So this was the page that we just did. Now let's move on to our last page. Now here we have a gatefold on a 6 by 6 inch top flap and a side pocket. So let's start with our base with two pieces of 6 inches by 8 3/4 of an inch, and just place one piece like that with a 1/2 inch flap on top, and we're going to put the second one at the bottom. Now let's do the other side. So remove the tape backing and make sure your page is completely flat, and then stick it down. So here again we have that upside down alignment for this. So the top of this page is the bottom of the next page. So let's do the markings first. Write something down or mark the top of your page and flip it upside down. So the top of that page is the bottom of your next page, and make a marking on this one as well, so there's no confusion at all. Now let's carry on with the page we were doing. So here's the top flap, that is 6 by 6.5 inches, and two pieces of 4.5 by 6 inches. So we're going to start by attaching our top flap. Just turn the page upside down so the top of the page is now at the bottom. Now we're going to attach the flap on the left bottom side of our page, just like that. Now we're going to do a side pocket on this side. So turn the page and attach the bottom part of the pocket with the side of your page. Once you're sure about that, then attach the sides. And we're done. So now we're going to attach the gatefold on our 6 by 6 top flap that we have. Now the 2 inches by 5 and 7/8 inch piece is going to come here. We're going to stick that later with our papers. And that optional 3 1/4 by 4 1/4 inch piece of cardstock is going to come here because I'm going to put 3 by 4 inch journaling card over there. So we'll do that later. Now flip this page upside down. We've already made our markings, so make sure the page is straight, and we'll have these 2 side flaps on the sides of our pages, which measure 3.5 by 6 inches. So we're just gonna attach these on the sides. Now we're going to do the belly band in the center, which is 2.5 by 7 inches. So remove the tape backing from one of the sides, and I'm just centering my page on the map and just attaching the belly band right in the center. Now make sure it's completely flat when you stick the other side. Now we're going to do the waterfall here. So turn the page upside down and take out the 8 pieces of 3 by 4.5 inch cardstock. Now we're just going to attach these one by one on our side flaps. So 4 on each side. And we're done. So all our pages are done now, and let's move on to the front and back inside cover of the album. So take out your cover and turn it sideways so that your hinge is at the bottom and the 3 1/4 inch of the triangular chipboard is at the top. Now we're doing our stacked pockets on the back inside cover first. So bottom one is 2 3/4 by 9.5 inches, and the top one is our 2 1/4 by 9.5 inch piece. So we'll start at the bottom. So remove the tape backings and align it around 1/8 inch away from the in between space that we have where the hinge starts. Now once you're done with the bottom, we're going to do the sides. So press down the pocket from the center and keep flattening it out towards the sides, and then press the sides down. Make sure your pocket is completely flat. Now let's do the top pocket. So remove the tape backing, turn your cover to the side, and just align this next to the bottom pocket that we've just stuck, and do the same thing on the other side. Make sure your pocket is completely flat. So we have a large pocket here and a small pocket here. Let's move on to the front inside cover where we have our 5 by 7 waterfall. So we have 8 pieces of 5.5 by 7 inches and a waterfall closure that was 1.5 by 6 inches. So we're going to first attach the closure at the bottom. I'm just using my mat to determine the center. So now we're going to put the 5.5 by 7 inch piece that we had not scored or taped. Remember I told you that'll be our waterfall piece. So we're going to stick that down right now. Just apply some liquid glue behind the cardstock and stick it at the bottom. Just go over it with your bone folder. Now let's start attaching our waterfall pieces. So turn around your cover and attach the first piece of waterfall at the absolute edge of the cover. Go over it with your bone folder and continue attaching the rest of the pieces of the waterfall. And that's it. We're done with all the pieces of our base and pages and cover and everything that we need. Let's just go over what we have up till now. So we have our cover with the waterfall and stacked pockets. Then we have the first pocket page with this first and second page. Then we have the envelope and the trifolds. Next is the second pocket page and the fifth and the sixth page. And the last one is this page. So I hope you guys have enjoyed so far. If there are any questions, you can just put it in the comment section below, and let's move on to putting our papers.